How to build great interpersonal relationships. These 5 psychological laws will help you. Interpersonal relationships are an indispensable part of our lives. Some people always struggle to handle them, leading to poor communication and various conflicts, while others seem to be natural diplomats who can always build comfortable interpersonal connections effortlessly. Understanding psychological laws and learning the art of conversation can help you manage your interpersonal relationships well. Primacy effect. A good first impression paves the way for the future. The primacy effect, also known as the first impression effect, refers to the impact that the impression formed by 2 strangers upon their first meeting has on their subsequent interactions. Does a first impression really matter that much? The primacy effect was first proposed by American psychologist Albert H. Hastert. Note, the original text mentions Luochens. The standard academic corresponding name for the proposer of this classic experiment is Solomon Asch, Lutyens, unified here as Lutyens for consistency. In 1957, Lutyens conducted an experiment using 2 fictional stories depicting the daily life of a student named Jim as experimental materials. One story portrayed Jim as a warm and extroverted person, while the other depicted him as a cold and introverted one. Lutyens then had 4 groups of middle school students with similar academic abilities. Groups A, B, C and D read these stories separately. Groups A and B read the exact same 2 stories, only in reverse order. Group A first read the story describing Jim as warm and extroverted, then the one portraying him as cold and introverted. Group B read the stories in the opposite sequence, with the cold and introverted depiction first, followed by the extroverted one. Group C only read the story about Jim being extroverted, and Group D only read the one about him being introverted. Subsequently, Lutyens asked the students to evaluate Jim's personality. The results showed that 78% of the students in Group A thought Jim was a relatively warm and extroverted person, while 82% in Group B considered him cold and introverted. Additionally, 95% of Group C perceived Jim as extroverted, and 97% of Group D saw him as introverted. Lutyens' research proved the impact of first impressions on cognition, and named this phenomenon the primacy effect, which refers to the influence of the first impression formed by 2 interacting parties on their future relationship. Although these first impressions are not always accurate, they are the most vivid and enduring, and determine the course of subsequent interactions. Therefore, in social activities such as making friends, job hunting and negotiating, we can make full use of the primacy effect to show our best side to others, laying a solid foundation for deeper connections in the future. Recency effect. Let recent performance outshine the past. In interpersonal communication, the most recent understanding of others tends to dominate people's perceptions, overshadowing the evaluations formed in the past. Psychologists call this psychological phenomenon the recency effect. The recency effect means that in the process of forming an overall impression, newly acquired information exerts a far greater influence on people's cognition than previously obtained information. It was a conclusion drawn by American psychologist Lutyens through experiments, with the most famous being his study on the impression of Jim. In 1957, Lutyens conducted this experiment. He used 2 passages of text to depict a student named Jim. The first passage portrayed Jim as a friendly, extroverted, sociable, and happy person, describing scenes such as Jim went to buy stationery, walking and enjoying the sunshine with 2 friends. He walked into a crowded stationery store, waiting for the clerk to assist him while chatting with an acquaintance. The second passage depicted Jim as rigid, shy, and introverted, stating that after school, Jim left the school alone. Walking on the sunny road, he stayed on the shady side. Double quotes. Lutyens' research found that the vast majority of participants who only read the extroverted depiction saw Jim as a friendly and extroverted person, while those who only read the introverted one regarded him as quiet and introverted. Obviously, the order in which information was presented influenced the participants' perception of Jim. The information presented first had a greater impact than that presented later, a phenomenon known as the primacy effect. For further research, Lutyens modified the experimental conditions by inserting other activities such as solving math problems and listening to stories between the 2 passages. Before asking the participants to answer the question, what kind of person is Jim? The experimental results showed that most participants judged Jim based on the information they receive after the inserted activities. In other words, newly acquired information had a greater impact on the formation of the impression of Jim, which is the recency effect. This experiment ultimately illustrated that the most recently presented information plays a dominant role in people's impressions and evaluations of others, shaping their overall judgment of a person. Law of mutual liking. Say I really like you to make them like you more. Famous psychologist Carl Rogers once wrote in his book, I have found that when I create a climate of genuineness, acceptance, and empathy, remarkable things happen. Individuals and groups in such a climate move away from rigidity and toward flexibility. He proposed the well-known law of mutual liking, which means that mutual affection between people reinforces attraction in interpersonal relationships. When you like someone, they will tend to like you back. How you treat others is how they will treat you. The law of mutual liking plays a crucial role in interpersonal communication, because people tend to like those who like them and bring them joy. Psychologists once conducted an experiment to prove people's reactions to praise. They divided participants into 3 groups and had each group listen to comments about themselves made by someone who wanted their help. The first group heard only compliments, the second group only negative comments, and the third group a mix of positive and negative ones. The results showed that even though the participants were fully aware that the commenters had an agenda and that the positive comments might not be entirely true, they still liked those who praised them. This indicates that kind words bring people joy and evoke their affection for the speaker. In interpersonal communication, we all hope that our words, deeds, and appearance will be recognized and appreciated by others. Positive evaluations from others satisfy our needs for social interaction and self-esteem, evoking pleasant emotions in us, and we in turn respond to others with corresponding friendliness, deepening the bond between each other. On the contrary, we tend to dislike those who dislike us. This mutual liking and disliking are not deliberate flattery or rejection, but an innate human pursuit of recognition and joy. In life, for example, people who are willing to actively discover others' strengths and express their appreciation sincerely often have more harmonious interpersonal relationships. In the workplace, a sincere comment between colleagues, such as your plan is so meticulous this time, it helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls. Not only gives the praised person a sense of accomplishment, but also prompts them to take the initiative to cooperate and help each other in future work, forming a positive collaborative atmosphere. On the other hand, those who are always critical and complaining, and only focus on others' shortcomings, often arouse resentment and end up being isolated over time. Even if they are highly capable, it is difficult for them to gain sincere support from others. The core of the law of mutual liking has never been insincere flattery, but genuine kindness and appreciation. Hypocritical praise may win temporary favor, but only heartfelt recognition can warm people's hearts and maintain relationships for a long time. Among friends, true mutual liking is not blind flattery, it is affirming each other's efforts when they are frustrated, sincerely celebrating their successes when they are prosperous, and gently reminding and encouraging them when they make mistakes. Such warm and sincere interactions make both parties feel cherished, narrowing the psychological distance and strengthening the friendship. In intimate relationships, the law of mutual liking is even the key to maintaining affection. Many conflicts between couples or spouses often stem from mutual neglect and negation, taking each other's efforts for granted and repeatedly criticizing each other's shortcomings. Over time, love is consumed in constant negative interactions. On the contrary, partners who know how to appreciate and affirm each other can always find each other's shining points in ordinary life. A simple sentence like "the meal you cooked is delicious," "it tastes like home," or "thank you for always tolerating my little tempers," can make the other person feel loved and valued, prompting them to give more sincerity to cherish the relationship, allowing the intimate connection to grow deeper in mutual nurturing. We must understand that the law of mutual liking is a two-way street, not a one-way giving or taking. To be liked by others, we must first learn to like them sincerely. To gain others' recognition, we must first learn to appreciate their strengths. When interacting with others, we might as well put aside our critical eyes, Focus more on others' merits, and offer sincere praise and recognition. There is no need for deliberate flattery or forced compliance. Just express kindness from the heart and treat the people around us with warmth. Over time, you will find that the people around you will repay you with the same warmth, and your interpersonal relationships will become increasingly harmonious and smooth.